Now that we formulated the argument, our time has come to figure out how is this going to help us solve the trolley and fat man problems. Okay, and notice I was proposing this method of argument analysis as a method to help you solve the problem, the ethical dilemma. And here's what I was suggesting. What we want to do is when we have a dispute, two sides, doesn't matter if there are even more than two sides, take each side and make the best argument you can for that side, then evaluate that argument and decide. Remember, in evaluating the argument, you'll find out, is the logic good? That is, do those premises actually lead to that conclusion? Is the argument valid? Is the inference valid? And then the second thing we want to decide is the argument sound? That is, not only is it valid, but does it also have all true premises? And that's also going to help you. It's also going to help you in deciding whether we have the proper reconstruction of the argument, the proper formulation of the argument, because sometimes we're going to find out in evaluating it that we're missing a premise, or that it's not argument, so it's not valid, or we're going to say that a premise that we put there just didn't make any sense, and there's a better one that we could put for defending this side, and then we'll go back and we'll reconstruct and evaluate again. But now we have fairly well reconstructed arguments, formulated arguments. We can explain what's going on. So to decide if the arguments or which side is good, we should be trying to figure out, is the truth of any premise, of any of these arguments, questionable? Now, remember, there are two kinds of premises that we have in the arguments, right? We have a moral conclusion, a normative conclusion, but we have a normative premise and a factual premise, And, the normative premises were the first premise in each reconstructed argument. So let's just roll it back a second. We'll see. So the first one, it is wrong to kill one person, even if it saves five. That's a normative. That's a premise. That's a moral statement. Okay. So, and then the second premise that we have in all cases, the factual premise. And let's go back and look at that example, because that is, throwing the fat man off the bridge would save five people by killing one. That is connecting something that went on the example to what's right or wrong, and it yielded that moral conclusion. And so that was the format of all of our arguments so far. Now, we got to figure out which premises are and are not acceptable. Now, the factual premises in the reconstructed argument, the second premise, they all seem to be pretty good because they just state the facts as they're laid out in the example. They seem to be fine. They're perfectly okay. So if we're going to find any premises that are not acceptable, we better look more closely at the moral premise. That is the first premise of each of the instructed arguments above. And we're going to see that in those four arguments, there were only two really different moral premises. The first one being that if we can save five people by killing one, then the right thing to do is to kill the one person. And in the other examples, that was one of the moral premises in two of the four arguments that we were looking at. On the two problems, remember, we had two problems, two arguments each. The second one is that it's wrong to kill an innocent person, even if it saves five lives. Now, both of these premises seem, at least at first, we could find some plausibility, some acceptability to these. But the question is, how is it that we're going to resolve this question? Because otherwise, we've gone through all this labor, all this intensive thinking about it, and we're not going to make any progress.